just right around like the shoulder blade. That's where I get my knots. I'll take like lacrosse balls to it.
Okay, not bad. There's a lot of moving parts in there.
Yeah, and I even as a kid, I could like always just crack my shoulders. Just
wow,
I've always been like that.
Okay,
ever since I was a kid.
That's crazy.
But the right side, like if I like lay down, I can always...
Do that one more time. Oh my goodness. You got a lot of crunchiness going on in there. All right, so first of all, have you ever been to a chiropractor?
Once briefly, and it was only because I had immediate, I had like pressure on my lungs, like I couldn't take a deep breath and I didn't know why, and what ended up being was like a tight knot pushing on my ribs, like putting pressure on my lung or something.
Was
like
it in the front more?
It was like in the middle. It felt like, I couldn't describe it except for that it felt like it was in the middle of my cavity. Like, like it's not directly on your back, but it's not directly on your chest. It was just somewhere in the middle, and that's the only way I could describe it.
Okay.
So.
But it was up high, kind of by the bony bump of your neck. Like where your neck meets your upper back.
It felt like it was. Can't remember which side it was, but it was like, kind of just in the middle of like this region. And so someone had told me to go to a chiropractor. I hadn't seen one ever before, so this one time they just tried to adjust me to relieve some of that pressure, but I can't really say it did anything, and I think I was just kind of nervous going into it, and I couldn't relax, so she couldn't adjust me appropriately.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of tricky sometimes with that. If you're feeling that tightness in there, I'm trying to think exactly what would be causing it.
Because it was only when I was taking like my deepest breath, like the deepest point, I couldn't, it's almost like the pain kicked in towards that deepest part of your breath. Yeah. And then it was fine. Like I could sit here and maybe feel a little bit of tightness, but it wasn't like pain. It was just like a discomfort. But again, it's hard to know. I didn't consistently see anybody. I was just kind of advised to try to do that to get relief. And I think
you didn't see anyone else? You just went straight to the chiro?
Yeah. And then I think maybe I got a massage after that.
Was there like a specific moment that something kind of like clicked, popped?
I think I just woke up one morning because I think it was like a heavy lifting day the day before. So I had associated it with a knot, or just like a tightness in my right shoulder, which I always get knots in that area. So I think I initially thought it was that, but I'm like, why is it causing pain when I breathe? So then someone had suggested a chiropractor.
I gotcha.
So
is that typically what irritates you the most though? Is that like your biggest complaint most of the time? Is that right sided shoulder?
Yeah, this right shoulder just has limited mobility. It's never painful, but if we're ever doing overhead movements, it always feels a little weaker. And I don't know if it's like cartilage or it's always been like that, like probably my whole life, but I never noticed it till I started doing CrossFit, that I notice it's, even though I'm right-handed, I'm strong, but I have like the least mobility.
Okay. Is it like actually deep in the shoulder though?
Yeah, like I was kind of like probably more in the shoulder than the lung. Just right around like the shoulder blade. That's where I get my knots. I'll take like lacrosse balls to it.
Okay, not bad. There's a lot of moving parts in there.
Yeah, and even as a kid, I could like always just crack my shoulders. Just
wow.
I've always been like that.
Okay, that's
I was
pretty.
A kid.
That's crazy.
But the right side, like if I like lay down, I can always...
Do that one more time. Oh my goodness, you got a lot of crunchiness going on in there.
I've always been like that. I remember sitting in desks as a kid and I would crack against.
So yeah, you do feel that obviously more on the medial side of the shoulder blade, like underneath the shoulder blade. You don't necessarily feel it in the shoulder. Yeah.
It's more the shoulder blade.
Holy cow. Okay, I've never felt anything like that. That's pretty wild. Yeah.
I don't know. I think I've always just thought it was.
At least not to that extent.
Right, and I don't know. It doesn't. That's not painful. It's crunchy.
Yeah.
And it's weird, but it's not.
The more you do that kind of stuff, though, does it feel like it loosens up, like you're breaking up scar tissue in there?
Not necessarily. I probably don't do it as often. I don't love it.
Yeah, that's really goofy. So again, like you have a lot of moving parts up there, obviously. So, like the upper ribs, if those, let's say like our poor posture, we start kind of leaning forward, we get tight pecs, biceps, rolls our shoulders forward, and then our head wants to fall forward. So when our coconut starts falling forward, that's when we get a lot of tightness kind of in the back of our neck, and then right over that bony bump and that's called the Ct Junction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's where your cervicals, your neck, meet your thoracic, which is your mid-back. Okay, so that junction's really tricky because we have like the traps, levator, scap. There's a lot of deep muscles that do actually go on the ribs.
Mm-hmm.
It's the posterior superior serratus muscle. So it's a really deep muscle, and most people can get like a really bad trigger point right where you're kind of getting that crunchiness.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that there's that much crunchiness in there tells me that there's some kind of like scar tissue development.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like even like a had type of thing where it kind of deposits like a bunch of calcium in there, so you get some kind of like bony-ish features, so to speak, in there. So when you're moving it around, you can feel that kind of crunchiness.
Mm-hmm.
We can take some pictures. I'll take a couple extra of that shoulder too to see if we could see any of that going on.
Okay.
Have you ever had x-rays of it or like an MRI?
Nope, because the only MRI I've ever had was probably for my knee and the lower back through a PT that I was seeing. So never specifically on the shoulder.
Okay. Well, we'll jump into the low back and the knee a little bit. Let's focus on the shoulder for now.
Okay.
But do you have any pain going down the arm at all?
No.
Just stays kind of right there?
It usually stays there. I think every now and then when I get stressed at work, because I'm sitting on my computer a lot, very mouse driven because the programs I use. So I'll tend to, every now and then it will like traverse down the arm, and it's more, or it'll go up the neck. And it's usually, I just associate it with stress, and I kind of probably tighten up a little bit when I'm doing a lot of mouse work.
Okay. So when you're sitting at the desk, kind of like prolonged sitting, poor posture?
Probably, yeah. I'm somewhat aware of posture just because I was working in a office environment where we were always aware of like, I can't think of the word, but
like the ergonomics.
Ergonomics, exactly. So we as a company, we were always encouraging like having footrests, making sure the desk was at the right height, that your hands weren't. So we were aware of it, but we were always like encouraging that to our clients that were purchasing furniture from us. We were not always on top of it ourselves, but aware was at least kind of the starting point.
It's hard to be perfect, obviously.
Yeah, we had really good chairs to sit in, so I was always really lucky.
That's all good stuff. Half the time it comes with just having that little bit of awareness, because if you have that little constant reminder, you're going to be, even if it's only 20% of the time, it's 20% better than zero.
Well, just knowing with, those natural seated elements of where your hands should be on a desk, where people are either like this or like this, and they don't realize how much over time it'll just create more problems. Yeah,
there's a lot of little things that we can definitely dive into with that. But one of the biggest things too is a lot of people sit in chairs where their knee is like parallel with their hip or actually higher than their hip. Mm-hmm. And the big thing is you want your hip above your knee. Okay. So what that allows you to do is actually get in a neutral position here, because if you have your knee above your hip, you're going to naturally start rolling out your back. And you're already setting up the foundation poorly for the rest of your posture. So little things like that. But for that shoulder, what seems to help it the most? Like if it does kind of get tight on you, do you just kind of do that trigger point stuff with the lacrosse ball?
I do, it'll be the foam roller. I'll kind of just go do a very slow roll and just kind of stop at maybe the points that I can feel it at most pressure.
So you almost try to do like a trigger point.
Mm-hmm. So
do you ever like ice it or anything?
Say it again?
Do you ice it or heat it or anything along those lines?
No, no ice or heat, just usually lacrosse ball or foam rolling.
Gotcha. All right. And then when it does flare up on you, 0 to 10, 10 being like the worst pain ever?
Oh my gosh, it's so manageable. It's just irritating, so maybe like a 4 or 5.
Okay. So just enough to kind of annoy you? Yeah. And it's not 24/7, right? It just kind of comes and goes?
Yeah, comes and goes. Usually it's 100% triggered by, again, stress or a workout.
Okay. And then for your low back here, so you had an MRI of your low back. Did you?
I had tweaked it once, and it was, there was no serious, I can't recall exactly what the results were, but it was nothing. It was more like you just need to like lay off of it, don't lift anything heavy, rest. I can't remember what.
They didn't say there was like a bulge or herniation along those lines?
It was super mild, but it was enough to, I remember what triggered it was, we were doing a low weight, high rep bench press. And I remember later that same day feeling like I had done a bunch of deadlifts. And usually it's a completely different position. So I was like, why I feel like I did a deadlift and I pulled my lower back. And then I kind of ignored it, but it was still like sore after a few days, which is not, again, uncommon if I was doing a deadlift, but the fact that I was doing a bench just was kind of like didn't make sense to me. And then I went to go lift something I had a cat carrier out of the car to take her to the vet, and I couldn't. I was like, I'm done. And like, just turning to driving and checking your side mirrors, looking over I could hardly turn.
Everything is kind of tightened up and spasmed
yeah,
on you.
So then that's what I went and had an MRI, and again, they didn't notice anything alarming. It's probably just a minor like lower back pull. This was years ago.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've always been more cautious of doing certain things and not to exceed crazy deadlifts or heavy weights. I think if anything, that's what'll trigger it. The only thing that'll trigger it. But that's been fairly quiet. That happened like 7 years ago.
Okay, so this is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, typically, especially if you're doing like you said, the low weight, high reps, we always think it's always like that one big pull or something, but typically it's more of the repetitive stressor that creates an issue.
And not probably being my core, I just assume was not in a, I don't know, I just associate.
A supportive position
it was,
type of
yeah,
thing.
It was probably relaxed.
Probably if you're lifting heavy, you kind of hyper focus on your posture
sure.
and keeping that stuff tight, but if you're going lighter weights, you just kind of
let your guard down
out
a little bit.
Yeah. If I had to make an assumption, I would probably assume you did have some sort of disc injury there too. We always hear of like herniation, bulges, things like that sound way worse than they are. But the reality is, there's a study done in 2015 with almost 2,000 applicants, and they're ranging from that age of 18 to 80, and 80% of them had a disc bulge. But the problem with these 2,000 applicants recipients were that they were all asymptomatic. They had no pains, no symptoms whatsoever, nothing going down the leg, no tightness, nothing. And they took MRIs, and 80% of them had a bulge.
That's crazy.
So again, there's different severities associated with it, but most commonly that is typically a disc injury.
Okay.
So when you do injure that disc, it tends to want, the disc is like a little water balloon, essentially. I like to call it jelly donut. So sometimes that jelly donut gets a little smushed. It wants to kind of protrude out towards the spinal cord. And if it puts any pressure, all it takes is the weight of a dime to actually cause any kind of pain. What happens is the muscles around it go into protective mode and spasm. So that's why people, when they bend over, pick up that pencil, all of a sudden it's like, oh, my back hurts.
Yeah.
Everything just stiffens up and they can't move. So if there's joint dysfunction, or that in this case the disc is dysfunctional, it's going to put pressure on the nerve. The nerve doesn't know what to do, so the muscles go into spasm and protect that joint in that area. So really straightforward, but typically that is some kind of disc injury.
That makes sense.
The way that you're kind of explaining it.
Yeah.
So again, with the adjustment, it's about decompressing that joint and remobilizing it. So that's ultimately taking pressure off that nerve that's irritated. Okay. So pretty straightforward there, but do you ever get pain going down the leg, or did you in the past? No? So it just stayed in the low back?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So if your low back does flare up, is there anything that specifically aggravates it?
Deadlifts.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that will seem to, and I think because I was kind of told, once you kind of agitate that area, or that you can actually tell, you're a little bit more prone to it moving forward. Like, it doesn't take much or as much to maybe trigger it to kind of flare up, but I'm just pretty cautious when I'm doing heavy deadlifts to make sure that everything's kind of engaged. And even with like back squatting, or it's only working out that I think I would notice when it gets tight, and usually it's, it'll have its typical tightness that kind of wears off after a couple days if it does act up, but I feel like I've been fairly in control, at least asymptomatic.
That's good.
Since then.
And at least, again, comes that awareness, right?
Yeah.
Just knowing that it's there, knowing to protect it, knowing the right biomechanics to protect it.
Yeah.
So what about like when you're sitting, standing?
I mean, I think sometimes maybe because of that one lower back, I think I've noticed I might have my tolerance for being on my feet. Like I can still manage, but I might feel a little bit of tightness in the lower back, but it's nothing that sitting for a little bit to get that break won't fix.
Nothing that's like alarming.
No.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Is there any like general medical conditions I should know about?
No, nothing.
Like high cholesterol, hypertension,
Nope.
thyroid issues, nothing along those lines? Okay. And you said you had some knee issues too?
Yeah.
Did you have surgery on that knee?
No surgeries, thank God.
Okay,
but
that's
I do
good.
feel like, 10 years of soccer, I lucked out with no major, I've rolled ankles here and there.
Okay.
Even more recently I've rolled ankles, but no surgeries, just, it's probably started about 4 or 5 years ago. It'll alternate knees. I've had it on both knees. It's like a patellar tracking, or at least that's what when I first had the pain, I did go to a PT and have the MRI, and there was no tears, but it could have been a minor tear, but nothing that they could see. So we treated it, and what starts it is I'll feel a little bit of tightness kind of up here, and a little fluid will start to build. And again, it's never at the same time, it always alternates, at least so far it has. Recently it was my left.
So do you feel like a little bit of clicking and popping? That's
clicking and popping is kind
right
of
underneath the kneecap?
Yeah, like I'll notice that, and then I'll get inflammation in here, and it just kind of will build.
Okay.
Almost, and usually once I feel that, I pull back on doing anything.
Okay, does your knee ever like lock on you to the point where...
Like my kneecap will get stuck. That's how I describe it.
Okay.
So
if you fully extend, does your knee not want to bend again or flex?
I've never not been able to bend it. It's just, I'll feel my knee, like I'll tell when my kneecap gets stuck, and then I kind of like will loosen it a little bit. But it limits me from running. It hurts to run. When it's at its worst, it hurts to run. It hurts to squat.
Okay.
And in those instances, since my first initial experience, I just have handled it on my own in terms of staying away from heavy lifting, squatting to boxes, lowering the weight, or just staying off of it. But I've noticed like the most repetitive wall balls, like when I do tons of repetition, where it's like when it involves going to full squat, that's where I notice it kind of flares up. Okay.
Yeah, for everything you're explaining, especially with the inflammation kind of forming above the kneecap like that screams patellofemoral syndrome. It sounds worse than it is, again, but typically if that patella is not tractioning properly over the kneecap, you're going to build scar tissue. It's called chondromalacia, so it actually builds just that scar tissue underneath, and that's the clicking and popping you feel. But the biggest thing is typically loosening up the lateral components of your thigh. So your PT was probably telling you to like
and I can feel it when this was flared up. I could almost like feel whether I was taking a tiger tail or whether I was using the what are those things called?
Like a percussive massage or
massage, it would literally like I will use it in this area, and it was kind of right in here that I could almost like feel a knot. I could just tell just from taking stuff over it. It'll immediately loosen up, and I'm like, oh, I feel good, and then within 10 minutes it kind of tightens back up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do notice that I usually will focus on rolling or working out in these areas, and I think something that I don't do enough, but I try to, is anytime after leg days, try to roll out my quads a little bit more and give them that extra attention pre and post leg day, but I don't always do it.
That's good, but that's something if your knees are really bugging you, it's all about loosening up the lateral components of your thigh. So IT band, that lateral quad. Typically, we need to strengthen the medial quad more because, again, the biomechanics, we just get too tight on the outside, too weak on the inside. It deviates the patella outside, so it just loses that proper traction, or tracking, I should say. But, yeah, so your PT was spot on with all that kind of stuff. You just got to keep up with loosening it up.
Yeah,
I'm in that same boat.
She tries to suggest doing a lot of like single leg movements, which I keep telling myself I need to kind of take a day just to do some of that accessory work on the one-legged movements to kind of, because I can tell my muscle mass has gone down significantly, and that now I'm struggling with knowing, is it pain because of the patella, or is it my leg is just weaker, so I'm trying to push it a little bit, but not where it's painful, but it just feels sore. Because I do feel like some of the stuff I'm doing, it's like I don't want to hold back too much where I'm not trying to get it stronger again, but it's an interesting.
If I can give you a recommendation, I would try to get in a good healthy habit of like always rolling it out. Okay. Even if it's only for 5 minutes or whatever the case is, just roll that lateral aspect of your thigh out as
Okay.
much as you can, and just get in a daily habit of doing
Okay.
it. So that would really help.
Yeah, I do notice like when I've been consistent about it, I can over time I feel the swelling going down. But yeah, it starts up here, and then the fluid, you can just visually see it in both kneecaps if it's.
Gotcha. All right, it's a really common thing, and we see it with a lot of avid runners, hikers, people that do move their knee repetitive motions all the time.
Yeah.
So, any family history I should know about, things like stroke, hypertension, heart issues, congestive heart failure?
No.
Nothing?
Nope.
Okay. All right, we'll do a couple vitals here. I do need to access that left arm, so if you just want to pop that left arm on your sweatshirt. All right. Yeah, so the whole scheduling process and everything, how was that for you? Was that pretty straightforward, super easy?
Yes, it was.
Good. I just rest your arm right on your thigh like that. Alright. I'll put this on your pointer finger.
Pointer.
You would catch that. I was like, why is that funny? Get it? That's alright. I always get Tony the Tiger. I'm like, yeah, I haven't heard that one before. At this point, I should just be like a Kellogg's advocate or something.
You should just like make your own like cereal box cover.
I should. That'd be funny. I need to get just a handkerchief with Tony on it. Vitals are really good.
Well, that's good.
So
I didn't go out last night like some people.
117 over 74, which is amazing. Again, that normal is 120 over 80, but you're even below that, so that's picture perfect. Your pulse oximetry was 98, so that's great. We want to see that above 95 at least. And then your heart rate was 71, so that's really good. And then what's your height and weight?
Height 5'8", weight 160.
Alright. I'm gonna do a little grip strength here too. You're a CrossFitter, so don't break my machine here. You're just gonna hold your arm at 90 here. You're gonna squeeze as hard as you can right through the weight here. It's not gonna move, so it feels a little awkward. But when you're ready, squeeze as hard as you can, and then you can just relax. Good. So one more time, as hard as you can, and then really squeeze, and then relax. That's perfect. Good job. Same thing on this side. As hard as you can, and relax. One more time. As hard as you can. Good. Perfect. It's a little weird, but you're 60 on both sides, so that's phenomenal.
Balance.
Yep. So are you okay with taking x-rays today?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it's always good to kind of see what's going on, especially with that right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take 3 pictures of your neck, 2 of your low back, and I'm going to open up that the A to P cervical so we can actually get the shoulder in there.
Okay.
Again, I don't think it's actually the glenohumeral joint, so as long as we're seeing those upper ribs and seeing what's kind of going on underneath that scapula, we'll get a better understanding of why that thing's clicking so much. All right? You're going to come on over here, and then this thing's called the bucky. All right, so I'm going to have you start with your butt up against the bucky.
Okay.
All right, so I use this kind of as a point of reference a lot.
Okay.
So start with your butt up against here. All right, I'm going to kind of poke around, find your hip here. There you go. It'll be nice too because we'll be able to see kind of what the low back's looking like as well. Yeah, when was the last time you had x-rays?
Oh my god. Other than like the MRI, I don't know. It's been so long.
Well, let's see what's going on, especially in that neck.
Right.
I do need this line going right down the belly button. So that looks perfect. You just keep your butt barely touching. That looks good. You keep your arms to your side. All you gotta do is stand nice and still.
Okay.
Nice and still, look straight ahead, okay? Just like that. Yeah, if you have a copy or a report from that MRI,
Oh my gosh.
was it a pretty long time ago?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's alright. I'm gonna have you face towards the wall. Right hip's gonna touch the bucky, and your arms are gonna kind of come up like this. You can actually rest your elbow right on top of the bucky. this will give us some good information about what's going on in the low back. We'll look at the alignment and everything and how the disc spaces actually look. But keep facing the wall, nice and still. Perfect. You can relax. Go ahead and put your back up against the bucky. The MRI is the best though to see the joints. So if you're looking for like how the disc is, if it is actually bulged, if it's going from one side versus the other, little things like that, the MRI is by far the best. And MRI is typically the best imaging for most situations because there's no radiation associated with it. But again, this is literally the latest technology, the newest technology that's out. So the radiation with this is extremely minimal, which is pretty phenomenal compared to where they used to be in the past. So again, I'm going to try to actually get this a little lower and really open this up so we get the shoulder in there. So we're just going to take 3 more. All of your neck here, okay? And that looks good. I'm actually going to have you a little bit right about there so we can favor that right shoulder a little bit more. So that looks good. Keep looking straight ahead. Your back's barely touching the bucky. Nice and still. Perfect. Yeah, so they look really good right off the bat. Yeah, you're speaking my language. Being proactive versus reactive.
Yeah.
So again, it's always like keeping up with motion, keeping yourself active, whether it's like playing with your kids, hiking, running, biking, playing sports, whatever you can do, but you do have to know your limits and you gotta understand your body, which again, like, yeah, exactly. Ourselves are our own best doctors, if that makes sense. Like, as an individual, you'll always know your body better than anyone else on this planet, right? So you have to be able to trust your gut, trust your instinct, and know your limits.
Right.
But, so we'll kind of go over your x-rays a little bit here. Again, overall, not bad. It's, nothing too crazy to write home about, but you do have a couple things that we do want to work on. So, yeah, another big thing for you too is if you're trying to re-educate that curve, they have like fancy blocks and fancy things to kind of help provide extension in your neck. So if you're laying on your back, like there's little air bladders you can pump up and kind of increase the curve of your neck.
Right.
Simplest thing though is just get a towel. Roll up a towel.
And just put it right back there.
Yep. So you're going to want to come by like that C5 area, which is going to be right through the middle, right through here. And what you want is have your back flat on the ground, have your head touching the ground, and then have that little rolled up towel so that you're getting extension through here.
Got it.
And you want to almost feel like your chin is going straight to the ceiling.
Okay.
Not necessarily like your head's falling off the edge of the bed or something where you're getting like too much extension.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So little things like that make a big difference.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll get you tuned up here. So I'm gonna have you stand up for a second. Everything.
Yeah.
So, go ahead and lay on your stomach here, okay?
Do you want me to give my shoes on?
You can leave your shoes on. That's fine. And that's perfect. There's little handles kind of right in front of your face here. Yep. And this is like a little trust fall. So you gotta trust it as you come down. But this is considered a high-low table, so it's really beneficial, especially if people have like a flared-up low back. I'm gonna bend your knees a little bit. Does that irritate anything in your low back?
Nope.
Okay. I think I felt that little click in your knee though.
Yep.
Okay. So you're a little short on that right side. I'm just gonna kind of poke around here, okay? Is anything tender when I poke on this right side?
No.
No? I poke in the butt here? Anything
No.
tender in there? Okay. tender on that left side?
No.
Okay. If I poke in there, anything tender? Not too bad?
Mm-mm. No.
Good. Are you just being tough for the camera or what?
I think I'm ticklish, so that's what.
Oh, okay. Well, you can laugh. That's okay. I don't get enough laughter in here. Everything's always too serious. Okay. Yeah, you can definitely feel how tight all that is. So
Sorry,
that's a tender spot?
It's like more ticklish than tender.
Yeah, the fact that you keep saying ticklish
Sorry.
just proves how tough you are.
No, it is like it.
Yeah, you can definitely feel that.
Oh yeah, right there.
So I'll have to show you a picture of that posterior superior serratus muscle. Again, it's basically right through here, but it's really deep, so it's actually right on the ribs. And it's very close to the border of the scapula here. And typically, if that gets super tight, or that trigger point's kind of flared up, it almost mimics like you hitting your funny bone. Okay. So it does translate into the shoulder, sometimes down the tricep, and then into that pinky finger. So it's really tough to kind of get that adjusted, but it's because there's so many big muscles here that are kind of guarding the area. So we're gonna get some extension through your mid back here, okay? So all you have to do is just melt, try to relax as much as possible, okay? You're gonna feel those little cracks, all right? Those cracks are it's just gas being released from the joints, all right? So nothing too crazy, nothing's cracking, breaking, nothing along those lines, all right? So come right through here. Do me a favor and take a nice deep breath in. Perfect, and let it all out. There you go. Lean on you here. There you go. Not so bad, right?
Mm-mm.
Good. Okay, I'm gonna come up a little higher. You're gonna feel that same little cracking, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So take that nice deep breath in and let it all out. There you go. One more. Okay. Come up a little higher and do the same thing here. Okay. This one's gonna be a little deeper, okay? So I'm gonna have to lean on you a little bit more, but take another deep breath in and let it all out. There you go. Let everything out. One more. Yeah, you're making me work for those.
Sorry.
You're good. No, it's not your fault. Okay, I might have to address those a little differently. And that's always a big part about this initial visit. Obviously, I ask you a lot of questions, but I also got to feel your spine and feel out like how you respond to the adjustments, what type of adjustment works best for you,
Right.
things along those lines. So, all right. This one's kind of goofy though, okay? I'm going to kind of traction out your head a little bit. All I want you to do is let this shoulder just drop to the floor. Try to relax best you can. All right. It does feel a little awkward at first, especially that you have this hoodie on, but just try to melt best you can, okay? So you're going to feel that kind of crack right in that first rib. One more. Okay. You are a tough cookie right now. It's alright though. Okay. Yeah, you got a lot of tightness in there. We're gonna try the same thing on this side here. I'm gonna come one segment lower, okay? So just keep relaxing best you can. Now it feels a little goofy. Just try to melt. Okay. I'm going to address those a little differently so that I'm not beating you up too much. Land this right side for me, okay? We're still going to adjust the low back. I'm going to bend this top leg, okay?
Okay.
You're going to kind of stack your hips. You're not going to fall off, I promise. I know it might feel like it. Alright. You're just going to kind of give yourself a little hug here. Alright. So I'm going to come up a little higher. And again, I told you that L5 was kind of kicking off to the left side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to adjust that L5 here, okay? So I'm going to kind of roll you like a log. It might feel like you're going to fall off. I promise you won't, okay? So just try to melt best you can in here. Okay?
Yeah.
Go on the other side here.
Oh wait, do I flip?
Yep. All the way on the other side. Okay, same thing, little bear hug. Stack your hips here, so I'm going to try to get that SI joint to move on this side. Okay? So this one's a little bigger joint, it might be more of like a thud. Alright? But again, all you got to do is just melt best you can. Alright? There you go. Just let everything relax. There you go. Good. Go on your back for me. That all adjusted really well. It is that CT junction. That thing is a little tricky here. So this is a different way to kind of approach that upper rib, okay? So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get my hand kind of right on that tender spot that I was poking at. Okay? So right about through there, let that shoulder just melt right on my hand. I'm going to come through your armpit here, okay? So just coming through the armpit, I'm going to use your elbow kind of as a lever. So try to melt best you can here. Okay? Let everything just relax. There we go. Good. We actually got that to move. Look at that smile. That's what I like to see.
It's like I think what I know is when I'm tense, or like when it's that tight spot, I'm worried. I'm trying to relax, but I think sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yeah, sometimes even like when someone tells you to relax, you want to like tense up more.
Well, it's like you kind of know what's coming.
Yeah,
so I feel like it's gonna take for me would be doing this regularly in order to like get more comfortable with just the process.
Yeah, and again, this has been going on for some time now, obviously. So, Rome wasn't conquered in a day or built in a day. Right? So it takes time to kind of get things moving. And once you kind of get used to the adjustments, we start mobilizing things. Mm-hmm. That's when you start getting the most relief and then kind of getting things lined up properly. So again, my other analogy is always, I want to be like your braces, like for your teeth almost. Right. Same concept. Can be sore after that first little tightening, but over time, after a couple more little tightenings, your teeth get nice and straight, and eventually you just get to that little nightly retainer. So we want to get you to that like once every month or two kind of adjustment, but it might take a little bit longer to kind of get that CT junction. But do you feel how tight that is on the right side?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
That's the C5, C6, that little fulcrum that I showed you on the x-ray. Mm-hmm. So you're going to feel some pops in your neck here, okay? Same thing just like in your mid-back and your low back. Good. And just let everything melt. These might sound a little louder, and it's only because they're closer to your ear. There you go. That was amazing. That moved really well. And I wasn't going to explain when I was going to adjust because I didn't want you to tighten up. So I know how athletic you are. I just got to be quicker somehow. So keep melting. We're going to kind of just a little higher, okay? There you go. You can wiggle your nose for me. There you go. That was perfect. Did I distract you a little bit? You're like, what the hell did he say? He's saying
I kind of knew it was going to come when I was like trying to relax and
It moved really well though. That CT junction is super tight on you though. So that's something that we'll want to work on in the future to try to get moving. Okay. So it was nice that we actually got that first rib to move with that little like armpit maneuver that I did on you. But there's definitely more that we want to do, like get extension through the upper back, the upper thoracics, and then get that CT junction moving even more. But I'm really happy with how your neck moved, your low back moved. But it'll take a little bit of time to get that CT junction moving. Okay. So is that tender? Yep. See, when you're laughing, most people are like screaming at me or saying calling me absurd things.
It's that weird like, I don't know, it's tender, but it's not. I find it ticklish.
Yeah, it just proves how tough you are.
I don't know about that.
You're laughing when most people are like trying to pull away from you or swinging with their other hand. So again, with this right shoulder and the right CT junction, I still like to kind of work down the whole chain here a little bit. So kind of doing some trigger point, adjusting the fingers, the wrist, the elbow, and getting things moving so that, again, like if I'm stimulating the nerves in your finger, they have to communicate all the way to your neck and brain. Okay. So it's just going to help everything right down the chain as long as I'm still kind of stimulating everything. Okay? Feel a little bit of crunchiness in there. Doing okay though?
Yeah.
Just laying there, how's that neck feel?
It's fine.
Feels good?
Yeah.
We got some good stuff
I'll be
moving
curious
there, that's
to
for sure.
see just like, I don't know, just going day-to-day things that, or at least maybe even waking up tomorrow morning and just
seeing how everything feels.
Yeah.
So again, did you wear braces?
I did.
Yeah, remember when you first put them on?
Oh, that's painful.
Yep. It was so tender for like 2 days, and you're just trying to eat anything cold.
Will I feel sore after that?
So it is normal to feel sore after that first adjustment, especially that it's been like almost 5 years since you tried to get adjusted.
Yeah.
So again, it's kind of like putting those braces on for the first time. You might be sore for a day or two, but ice is your best friend. Okay. So if you ever want, if anything is sore, you definitely just should ice it, especially if that CT junction sore, because I tried to do quite a bit on that today, and we didn't get the most movement from it.
Oh, we're cracky on the left side.
Yeah. There you go. You want to pretend like you're a boxer for a day or two. Okay, so put that ice right over that bony bump on the back of your neck.
Okay.
And you only have to do it for like 10-15 minutes max, just enough where it gets like a nice little cold, and then you want to keep it off until it fully thaws out. Okay. So typically like another 15 to 30 minutes or so. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to bring you up here. All right, just find the platform. Make sure your hair is not caught up in anything.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you're good. So when you stand up there, how does that feel, like in the low back, in your upper back, in your neck?
So far it feels fine. I think it's like when I'm sitting down, like, you know, I sit a lot at home, so I'm curious to see when I'm like getting up from those transition movements that I think I'll feel like, I mean, I feel good.
We got a lot of good things to move. I know that crunchiness in the shoulder is weird, but you already like look taller. You actually have your shoulders back a little bit, which is really good. But from here on out, I want you to kind of be aware of keeping those shoulders down and back. Try to keep your ear over your shoulder, keeping your chin high, things like that. So if you're at your home desk or whatever, make sure the monitor's up high. You're not looking down too much. Right. Little things like that. But it's going to take some time, obviously, to get that CT junction moving.